Hi, True Crime Grapevine fans. It's me, Patty Lee, and I'm here for the 42nd episode of the True Crime Grapevine. If you're new, hi. I'm Patty Lee. I do call myself an armchair. I'm the dyslexic armchair detective. I have I'm ABD, PhD in educational psychology, which means I've studied long and hard about human development, a little bit about abnormal, but mostly typical development, people's motivations, how they think and reason and problem solve, which is kind of interesting when it starts talking about crime. I've always been interested in crime, so if you're new, welcome. Hit that like button, subscribe if you will. It has also been, as of February 22nd, because I started my first upload on February 22nd, 22. So it was 2/22/22. So it's been a year. If you don't know, I drink with every episode, and I have this lovely bottle of Asti Spumante that I'll be pairing with each drink. It's also the last week, well, it's last day in February today. It's Tuesday, the 28th. Not a leap year, sorry. There's going to be a loud, maybe not. Ooh. Oh, yes, loud. Let's see, hopefully. Ooh, perfect. No, I have my little thing. All right, so let's pour a glass to celebrate my 42nd episode. Yay. All right, oops, and I didn't do it right so that there was no, this is going to be all bubbles. So we're going to have to pour more in a second. So the cases that we are going to be talking about in this episode, I'm going to do a quick overview, tell you what cases are going to be included. Then I'm going to talk about them all as fast as I possibly can because I will later update more specifics with cases that have more details. But because these tend to go very long, I thought it might be better to put up my shorter comprehensive upload first. Tell me what you guys like. Like I said, it's been a year, and you know, I've done this 42 times. That's why it's the 42nd episode, so 52 weeks in a year. So I've gone like I have this past time more than a few days. So my last upload was the 14th, I believe, or thereabouts. So this 42nd anniversary upload covers from February 14th later in the day until today, Tuesday, February 28th. Not a leap year. So what are we going to be talking about? I've also tried to do better with my pictures up here and to get a bigger picture-in-picture look for you guys. So let me know what you think and the cases we'll be talking about. So some I have missed the starting and things have happened and they're going to be in this order. Samantha Humphrey from Schenectady, New York, a 14-year-old missing girl who unfortunately was found deceased. We'll be talking about that. She was found this week. Bishop David O'Connell's unaliving that happened out in California in the Hacienda Heights, which is close, it's like a suburb of LA. We'll be talking about the MSU shooting, which happened, and I sort of didn't get all of it, so we'll be talking about the victims. Unfortunately, 3 people died. We'll talk a little bit about why we think the motive. Temple University police officer was also shot. That's our 4th case. We'll talk about that. That was from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Nicola Bulley case. I have some... we have a very sad update, but also some thoughts on remaining questions. Case 6 will be the Lindsay Clancy case. I have a big correction about that. Thank you to the person who left me a comment. Always let me know if I don't say things right. We're going to be talking a lot about biases and why people make cognitive mistakes. I being one of them. Nobody is without cognitive biases, and it affects our reasoning. Case 7 will be a small update on what's happening after Aiden Fucci from Florida did not go to trial because he pled guilty. We'll talk about his sentencing, the next sentencing, and other aspects of that. The Taylor Shaubuisness from Green Bay, Wisconsin is hitting the news again. We will talk about it. I did talk about this case because it happened last February. It happened right before I started my channel, or as I was starting it. I discussed in my first episode, I believe we discussed that case. Back in the news, more craziness. It's really fascinating what people act like. Case 9 will be the Vallow-Daybell case. We have case, just an update. We have the Murdaugh murders will be case 10, and then case 11 will be stuff about the Idaho 4. We have some court filings that were made by both sides and a little discussion. So let's get into it. Raise a glass. Here's to a year on YouTube for an old lady. I hope you've enjoyed it. Like and subscribe if you have, and you haven't already. All right, so our first case is that of, so case 1, Samantha Humphrey. As you can see up here, this beautiful young 14-year-old girl. She was believed to last be in Riverside Park last November 25th. She was seen on surveillance video in that area near the river, the Mohawk River. As you can see, what she was weighing, she's 95 pounds. Oh, she was a very small girl. So unfortunately, this past week they found a body in the Mohawk River. It had gone down, and a head of an individual was visible. A fisher person, I don't know if it was a man or a woman, saw what looked to be like a body in the river. Police were called, and it was Samantha. So her family at least now knows. She was found tied up in a shopping cart underwater. So obviously it seems to have, it has all the marks of homicide. We will talk more about, there was more information about, and her mother said she was seen with her ex-boyfriend. Her phone was found right away, and they had a hard time opening it because it didn't have the password, but the ex-boyfriend was very quickly cleared. So on the video, I do believe they saw a older man who has felonies for scary things. So right now we don't know who did this, but it obviously, she didn't run away. It wasn't an accident. All right, case number 2. Case number 2, we have auxiliary, which I didn't know there was such a thing as an auxiliary bishop in California. This is the case of the unaliving by shotgun of Bishop David O'Connell. So the bishop here, he actually was born and educated at first in Ireland from Dublin, and then he came to the United States. He was made an auxiliary bishop by Pope, I think it was, oh, I'm not Catholic, I'm sorry, but the Pope that was from Austria or Poland. Anyway, Pope John Paul. He was, for everybody coming to his house, which you can see here, it was in Hacienda Heights, which is in the LA suburbs. He did not show up last Saturday for Mass, or for a meeting, I believe. And a deacon from the church, and if you don't know what a deacon is, it's a lay person, meaning they're not clergy, but they take on roles in the church of leadership. A deacon, like a priest, but they're not a priest. A deacon came to his house to see why he wasn't there and found him. He was shot 5 times, but the person who found him couldn't really, because of clothes and things, couldn't see, but immediately called 911. He was declared dead. It was obviously a homicide because it was gunshots. Right away, they found on surveillance, and don't forget there's surveillance everywhere, that they saw an SUV they could identify it. It was the housekeeper's husband. His name is Carlos Medea. He is 65. The bishop was 69. He is the husband of the housekeeper. Right now, the motive isn't clear. He has made statements, I guess, saying that it had to do with the bishop owed him money, which wouldn't make a lot of sense. I mean, they said the motives, he's said other things. He's not making a lot of clear sense. He does not have a violent record, but he does have a record of drug use, but nothing, at least involving law enforcement since 2017. So the Lucas County, the LA County Sheriff, Robert Luna, is the one talking about this. And of course, his congregation is very upset. The city is upset. Obviously, this man, for everything we know right now, so we know that there can be things that go on, but he does not seem to have had any problems. We'll find out if there have been, of course. So I've been talking about GSR, and I'm not talking about gun residue. I am talking about gossip, rumor, and, speculation. Now, those were the facts I gave you. The speculation and rumor, the first thing when I told my sister about this case was, she wondered too, did he and the housekeeper have any, who knows? We will find out more about that case. But it is interesting. It is interesting, right? In a true crime sort of voyeuristic way. And it's very sad though. So condolences to the LA Diocese. He worked with all kinds of, with gang members, working out peace treaties. I mean, he was working with anybody. A lot of people showed up at his memorial. So it's a real shame, just to say. So again, Bishop O'Connell, he will be missed. All right. If you have watched this channel before, besides the drink that I pair with the case, if there's a shooting, if there's a mass shooting, I do a shot of whiskey. Why? It's medicinal, and it's what we need. So my reading glasses are here. I always have to watch when I tip back. Ready? 1, 2, 3. It's Vanilla Crown shot. To the victims: Brian Fraser, Alexandria Werner, and Ariel Anderson. These students, 2 were in Bexley Hall, 1 was in the student union. Let me tell you what happened in this case. So, oops, I threw it. Oops, I haven't even been drinking that much. I've already thrown one of my case files to the ground. All right. Let me tell you just a little bit. One of the channels that I watch a lot is called Surviving the Survivor. And the host is a not ex-journalist, but a retired journalist from the mainstream media, and he started this channel with his mother, who is a Holocaust survivor. That's why it's Surviving the Survivor. He always starts each show with memorializing the victims, which I think is a good idea. So over my shoulder here, you can see that this is Brian Fraser. He was his fraternity's president. He was a sophomore. He was from Grosse Pointe, Michigan, and his fraternity that he was a president was Phi Delta Theta. He was known to be very generous with his time, a kind individual. We next have, this is excuse me. This is Alexandria Werner. Now, it said that she was also from Grosse Pointe, Michigan, but the area that she was from was called Harper Woods. She, let me look and see, was a junior, and she was studying to be a doctor. And she wanted to change the world. I mean, it's really very sad. And she was majoring in biology, a junior. She was 20. Then we have Ariella Anderson from Grosse Pointe. She was also a junior. And I do have what her major was somewhere around here. Again, none of these students did anything wrong. A 43-year-old, very troubled, mentally ill, I believe, personally. That's a bit of a, not an aside, but I'll tell you why. Let me just tell you the timeline of what happened. So, on February 14th, Valentine's Day, this man, a 43-year-old African-American man, entered the Berkey Hall on the MSU campus. He went right to a classroom, and by 8:15, gunshots were being heard, and people inside this Cuban literature class in that classroom were being shot at. By 8:18, so 3 minutes later, 911 calls were flooding in to the 911 there. This MSU, if you don't know, is Michigan State University. The Spartans. Go Spartans. Green and white, other colors. Campus is located in Lansing, Michigan. East Lansing, to be specific. So by 8:18, calls were coming in that Berkeley Hall had a shooting. By 8:31 was the first alert by the campus. And instead of saying shelter in place, they say secure in place. And we all know, if you get any texts from educational institutions during this type of thing, they text 3 words: run, hide, bite. If that's not enough to scare you and give you, like, raise the skin on the back of your neck, I mean, it would be horrible to get that text. That happened at 8:31. At 10:04, a second alert went out to students advising them that there was an active shooter on campus, that they should secure themselves. And I never even thought about this, but that they should silence their cell phones and be quiet. We live in a very strange time, don't we? In the freest country in the world. And yet it's almost like we're always in an active war situation. But I never even thought about that, to make sure your cell phones were silenced. At 10:04, that was a second alert at 10:04. At 10:26, all the MSU activities were canceled on campus and people were told not to come to campus. By 11:30, the authorities, they announced that 5 people had been shot. It was actually 7, but at that time they only knew about 5. By 11:30 that night, there were 2 photos released of the suspect entering Berkey Hall, that they could see what he was wearing, what he looked like. They were getting information. The suspect was located by 11:35. A citizen paying attention to the news recognized him and let the authorities know. By 11:35, then by 11:36, the university did announce that there had been 3 fatalities, which are the people behind myself. That's a little bit about what this is a picture actually of the student union. So after going into Berkey Hall, going into that classroom, the 43-year-old man, suspect, then went to the student union, which I believe was where Brian was shot, and a number of others. By 12 midnight, the police report that the suspect was located. So after they ID'd him, they located him off campus and then found he was dead of a self-inflicted gunshot wound, which, if you paid attention to, like, statistics and things, in mass shootings, typically a gun is used, and typically the ending is that the shooter takes their own life. As an aside, on one of my main squeeze sources, the Surviving the Survivor podcast and YouTube channel, he had on guests. That's the best thing about his show, is he has on expert guests. And he was talking to Gary Bacata and Ann of the Mindhunter show, and another gentleman. But anyways, Gary Bacata was clearly talking about what we know about these individuals. And often mental illness plays a part, but they've lost someone very special. It seems to be the breaking point. And we did find out that the shooter did lose his mother. Also, it was February 14th, which was also the day that the Marjorie Stone Douglas shooting occurred. And it, again, it seems to trigger people. The police did so that by just after midnight, the shooter was found, and there was no more danger. Then by 8 a.m. at the news conference, police said that there were 8 victims, all were students, and 5 remained in critical condition with the 3 fatalities. Then the shooter was ID'd as Anthony Wayne McRae, 43. So on February 20th, 3 of the 5 survivors are no longer in critical condition, which is great. And on February 23rd, one of those was discharged and identified as Troy Furbus, a music major, and he spoke on Monday, this past Monday, about being shot in the chest and feeling like he had a second chance at life. One of the other the one student still in very critical condition is a Chinese overseas student who was a sports management major who very much loved sports, everything having to do with sports. And he was shot in an area that caused a spinal injury. So, and he is unable to move below. It also affected his lungs below his chest. So that's horrific. And we'll talk more about that. All the survivors were taken to Sparrow Hospital. But this is horrible. And when I want to talk more about this, what I want to get into is what we can. There seems to be an epidemic, in my opinion, of mentally ill people who are unable to get help, and then we end up talking about them on these podcasts, which is a little depressing, and maybe we could talk a little bit more in that spotlight case about what to do. It's really sad. All right. Speaking of sad, speaking of another person that I'm not really clear on the person's motives, this is the 4th case. Raise a glass to Sergeant Christopher Fitzgerald. He was given the honorary upgrade of a sergeant, which actually helps all of his remaining relatives. And Temple University, the president spoke very eloquently. Christopher was a valued employee. He had been a sheriff's deputy before, working for the university. Temple University is located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And the university president said, like, this wave of violence is becoming unbelievable, and they can't depend on just their officers to stop it. So what happened? On the night of, this was the Saturday, the 17th, 18th, on February 18th, Officer Fitzgerald saw in the area of Temple University 3 masked, dark-clothed juveniles, it looked like, men. And there had been breaking and entering and carjacking in the area. So he radioed in. He was on patrol. He radioed in, made a pursuit. 2 of them hid. 1 of them did not. He chased that young man down. When he got to the young man, he ordered him onto ground. And surveillance cameras around the area heard him order the suspect down into the ground. The suspect actually took out a weapon and shot Christopher Fitzgerald. Christopher Fitzgerald fell on the ground. The juvenile, he's 18. The young man then shot him, I believe, 3 more times. So at this point, he's not even just trying to get away. He's now shooting a police officer on purpose 3 more times, who's already been shot and is on the ground, and tries to then, he looks like he's, apparently in the surveillance, he looks like he's going to leave. Then he comes back and tries to get Officer Fitzgerald's gun, his service weapon too. Does not. Runs down the road, apparently, then carjacks a driver, saying he'll kill them if he doesn't give him the car. The person did give him his car. He went another city block, so about a mile, somehow got out of that car, called his mother, who came to pick him up. All right, so at the end of that evening, when it's Sunday, early hours, they have located the other two suspects who are hiding. They take them to the homicide division because now we have a homicide. One of them is the brother of the suspect. They are 16 and 17, so they're juveniles, technically. The brother turns over the name of his brother, who is Miles Pfeiffer. Miles is 18. Miles went home. So by 6 a.m., though, they have a name, they have an address. So it's outside the city limits in a rural area. They get Miles. He is arrested without incident. We'll hear more about this. Last Thursday, the 23rd, Officer Fitzgerald was put to rest. As you can see here, he had a full funeral with honors, but I don't know how. I mean, and he was upgraded to sergeant, which means his benefits are upgraded, so that helps out his family. He leaves behind 5 children. Now, Temple University has offered that if his children do go to university at Temple, they will get a free ride. So that is a small detail, I guess. So Thursday was his wake and viewing, which people around went all around the Basilica. It was St. Peter and Paul Basilica in downtown in Philadelphia. Then on Friday, they had the funeral, and he was taken to the cemetery and interred. And that's a horrible thing. What's really horrible is that an 18-year-old, 18 years old, will now be, his life is ruined completely. And the lives of those 5 I mean, we don't know what the motive was. Something is very wrong in our society when an 18-year-old doesn't, instead of just being, arrested, decides to shoot at an officer and then go ahead after shooting him and he's on the ground unable to chase you, goes back and executes him. Sorry, that's a little bit of my opinion. Something is very wrong with our children. Something is happening. All right. So here's to Sergeant now, Officer Fitzgerald from Temple University. Now let's go all the way over the pond, as they say. I'm gonna offer a glass in celebration of the life of Nicola Bulley. Why celebration of life? Why does it sound like she's gone? Well, if you're following true crime, which if you're following me, you are, you know that Nicola Bulley, after 23 days of being missing, her body was found a mile from where the bench that she was last seen at, in the reeds along the river Wire. As you can see behind me, there's a picture of the reeds where she was pulled out from, and that's a picture of Nicola. This case is disturbing because of a number of things. Since the last time we spoke on February 14th, before she was found, there was a presser by the UK police in which they mentioned that Nicola was considered a vulnerable person. Not leaving it just at that, they felt compelled then to say that, well, she was experiencing, and I kid you not, perimenopausal symptoms and liked the alcohol. If you're a woman listening to this, you might be a bit concerned, because that pretty much describes everybody I know over the age of 40. We don't know what her alcohol dependence was, and they didn't say alcoholic, just that she had an issue with alcohol. But the whole thing about perimenopausal, she had daughters that were 6 and 9, lived with her partner, which they had a great relationship. Now, what we found out much later after her body was found, and now there have been all kinds of, now they are having an inquest. So let's talk through. So she was found, unfortunately deceased. There are some aspects to how she was found that are a bit disturbing. But at least her family now knows. But that happened after she was sort of maligned and her character dragged through the mud by saying, which I don't even really understand. They didn't describe what they meant, but like, oh, she had perimenopausal symptoms. Well, welcome to the, I'm like, that isn't a vulnerability. Like, so every woman is vulnerable. And there's such a thing as menopause too. Let's not get into this. So while this was happening, as soon as those people did, as soon as the law enforcement gave this presser saying that she was a vulnerable person who, and then they followed it up with why she was vulnerable, you know, releasing her private information. I know I wrote down the name of the people. There was a woman by the name of, let me see, Samantha, somebody who was a victim's advocate. And, oh, let's see, Salula Braverman, who raised concerns about the personal information just being thrown out there, which, thank you, she's right. That and I really, being hormonal and upset at times, and maybe even drinking too much wine at night. I mean, she had a job. She went to her job. She drove her girls to school. It's unclear as to why they felt, I mean, who's to say she had a problem? I don't think there's been any reports of her drinking and driving, which is the first sign of a really bad, you know, drinking problem, or being drunk during the day. The school never said anything about smelling alcohol on her breath. So I don't understand where this is coming from, and it did sound very much like victim blaming, which was what Salula Braverman also felt was. And then Commissioner John Edwards also was looking into how that information was shared, and Dame Vera Bard, the former victims commissioner for England and Wales. So while we say UK is, all of UK is like England, Scotland, Wales, as well as Ireland, I believe is part, maybe that's not part of the UK, the United Kingdom. Sorry UK friends, I'm a stupid American. And as you know, we're dependent to figure these things out ourselves, because our public school education doesn't really focus on much besides our own history, which is horribly xenophobic. I believe the UK, the United Kingdom, includes, or did once include, like Northern Ireland is independent. I am unclear. Please, if you're from Ireland, please let me know who exactly is included in the UK. But for the rest of our listeners, the reason that Dame Vera Bard is a former victims commissioner for England and Wales is because England and Wales are considered separate entities within the United Kingdom. Lots of times Americans think England is the UK, and that's not true. The United Kingdom is larger. Just like Michigan is part of the United States, England is one part of the United Kingdom, if that makes sense. But anyways, so 3 people in positions of authority or past authority have spoken out to say, like, what are you doing? Why are you saying this? And it did seem, so that happened on the, let's see, on the 15th was when the LA held their big presser. And were they trying to say, like, look, we, like, leave, there was intense pressure. We know that this case was under intense scrutiny by all kinds of true crime people. It took on this was like England's, excuse me, this is the UK's version of Kylie Rodney or Gabby Petito or Susan Morphew. It was that big. And so did the local constables, did they feel pressured? St. Michael's on Wire in Lancashire is a very small area. It is not like London. It's not Scotland Yard. Maybe they felt pressured and made an error. Like, not meaning to blame the victim, but saying, without saying it, I guess what we finally found out was that there had been a call 3 weeks before this incident in early January to the house. We're not sure exactly what. Was Nicola upset? Was she yelling? Did she scare the girls? We don't know who made the call. We don't know exactly what happened. All right, so we'll talk more about Nicola Bulley because of the remaining questions. I'm going to do an extended little case spotlight because there are questions, people. Questions of a local group that was started 2 days, it started a YouTube channel 2 days before Nicola Bulley went missing. Named the channel after her. I'm not sure if it just happened to be they started a channel 2 days and then named it after her. The guy who did it is a doozy of a YouTube, sort of the worst, in my opinion, the worst of YouTubers, actively getting involved, actively messing around in the investigation there. He was somewhat local, and I really want to know about his involvement in this whole thing. And then we have a psychic who found another person missing, and the whole weird bench 23, she was found on 23. The psychic was the one who found her. She was found within a mile, and they had already looked there. We have more to talk about. So look for the Nicola Bulley spotlight. I will take that after I finish doing this roundup for episode 42. But to the Bulley family and to her partner Paul and to her girls and to all of YouTube who stays in our lane, which is trying to be respectful. Oh, Gisela K of Grizzly True Crime, to you, girl. She is a channel that I really appreciate. She has kept up on the Nicola Bulley case. She talks about it respectfully. She's the one I learned about the psychic, and now it is out in all the media. Yeah, a psychic was the one who said, look over here. I don't know, are psychics real? Maybe, I don't know. But that person also found another a teenage boy in another area earlier who had gone missing for 23 days. What's with 23? What's with psychics? We're going to talk about it. But all I know is that she was found in the reeds along the river within a mile of where the police, they knew she was in the river. They said she went in the river. I don't know if they have more information about her wanting to be in water maybe or something, but why didn't they look, literally, beat the bushes? I still don't see how in 23 days they didn't go down the entire sides, both sides in the reeds. Like, see? How did they not go in? I have questions. I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to bother the constables, and I'm not going to get involved in the case myself. Literally, I'm in my armchair, the dyslexic detective. Hi, Patty Lee, me. Please subscribe. It'd be great if you could subscribe and hit the like button. But seriously, I'll tell you when I'm speculating. I want to give you the facts, and then if I'm speculating, I'll let you know. So a psychic was the person who alerted them that they should look there. And when they did, they found her. I still don't see, they were so adamant she was in the river wire. And she was in the reeds, right there, in the water, for 23 days. And I don't get it. I don't get it. See, so here, we're up here in the UK, kind of close to Scotland, right? Way up high. This is, so they're near the Irish Sea up here. Her body was found here, and she went in here, just down the river a bit. They had been looking 23 days. You tell me. Did they not literally beat the bushes on the side of the river all the way down? I don't know. It just seems, but maybe it's one of those weird things. It is tidal, meaning the tides make things go up and down. So maybe she wasn't always right there. Maybe psychics are real. I don't know. I have an update for you on Lindsay Clancy case. Number one, I made a mistake. I said that the baby lived. The baby survived the first 3 days. I made an error based on my cognitive bias of wanting to believe, oh, the baby lived. Well, I had been reading an article for the Timeline, and I knew that all three had perished, and yet when I read that, my brain automatically was like, yeah, oh, but no, one survived, because I wanted one to survive. That is cognitive bias. You can know something is not true and then want something to be true, so that if you see one thing, you are biased towards, oh, that's what I want. Basically, that's what I want to be true, so it must be true. It's really something that we all do, and so I'm calling myself out for that. It was my error. So, we now have a better timeline. I'm going to do a bigger case update on this because I think it's very important that we know precursors to this happening, even though this only happens with an actual infanticide or felicide in like 1% of cases, but we need to do better. She had been seen psychologically by a number of people, and besides giving her lots of pills, everybody missed the signs. And I think reading back, it's pretty clear that this was similar to Andrea Yates. And yet, you know, people still like, oh, she planned it. She planned it like how people plan their own unalivings, which is like the last day, all of a sudden they seem happier. It's like they've made a decision. Just because if you're having delusions and psychoticness, I just made that up. I just think we need to talk more about when new moms are experiencing a lot of anxiety and depression, they can't be left alone. They must be given support, no matter what they want, because lots of people are perfectionists and will try to cover up. They'll say something, it will leak out, and then they'll take it back. That seems to be, I'll tell you more about this case, but man, she was on 13 drugs at different times in the past, like in the months leading up. And let me just tell you, I don't think her husband really understood as much, but the system in my opinion, did a misjustice. We'll talk more about it. That's this week's case 6. But the most important thing I wanted to tell you guys was, unfortunately, I needed to make that correction. And somebody let me know in the comments. I read all of your comments. Thank you very much for keeping me in check. I'm going to spotlight that case because I think there's more we can talk about and learn. All right. Case 7. I was going to call him Andrew. Aiden Fucci was back in court on the 23rd, last Thursday. We're discussing when his sentencing is going to be because on Monday he decided he wasn't going to go to court. This is our 7th case, by the way. Yeah, he's going to, on March 20th, 21st, they're going to have a sentence. As you can see up here, I want to make sure that we recognize that the victim, Tristan Bailey, she was only 13 at the time, turning 14. And this is such a loss. It does seem that Mr. Fucci, 16 now, 14 at the time, was making dangerous statements. Again, we need to talk about this. If your friends... If you are somebody who is younger and your friend jokes around about wanting to kill people, you've got to tell somebody. Because, again, leaking. Jokes aren't always jokes. When someone, he joked around he wanted to drag somebody into the woods and murder them, which is what he did. Stabbed her over 100 times. And seemingly for no reason. He seems disturbed. We'll see more. So... As you can see up here, there's 7 factors that they're going to consider at this sentencing. That either he can be sentenced to, the minimum is 40 years and the maximum is life. They're going to look at the nature of circumstances, the effect of the crime on the victim's family, horrific. Mental, emotional health of the defendant at the time of the offense, that's going to come up, I believe. The defendant's background and family, the extent... And let me tell you, one of the things that we'll be talking about is his mom is still having to go to trial for tampering with evidence. So let's talk about the background of the family, the extent of the defendant's participation, and possibly any rehabilitation. I mean, I don't know if he needs meds. Just my opinion. I don't know. I do think the judge very specifically said to him, you have to help your, he's got a public defender. You've got to help your lawyers. You understand this. And he said, yes, he understood. She said, the judge was basically saying, like, and sort of hinting at, like, you were very young at this time, like trying to give him clues as to what he could say. I don't know what he's going to say. I think he personally, developmentally, was disturbed in some way. I don't know his full background. And that is why when you get to sentencing, you have those mitigation specialists that we keep talking about in the Vallow-Daybell case. A mitigation specialist is somebody, especially if it's a death penalty. And we saw that in the Marjorie Stone Douglas case. They look into the background and say, and they look at these 7 reasons, especially mental, emotional health, the defendant's background and family extent, those things, I think, are very telling sometimes, just personally. All right. Case number 8. Is it any of Shaubuisness? Sorry, it's a bad joke. Case number 8 is Taylor Shaubuisness. And her business, it's a little cray. She is 25 now. She was 24 at the time. She apparently on February 22nd, 23rd of 2022 in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Here's her boyfriend who she allegedly murdered while having sex. She described to the police that she and he were taking meth, that she strangled him, I believe with a chain. I don't know. And then cut off his head, decapitated him. I don't mean to laugh. It's just so unbelievable that, I mean, she described how I don't know how she was allowed to be interviewed because I think she was still high at the time. She was trying to hide. She first continued to have relations with the body and parts. Necrophilia isn't a thing, but assaulting, I believe, desecration of a corpse is one of her charges. It's all very disturbing. And the meth aspect, if you are familiar with the person who ate off somebody's face in Florida when they were on drugs, don't do drugs, people, is my thing. So that was Taylor at the time of her arrest, Shaubuisness, and her boyfriend, Shad Thyron. His mother heard something and came down. Shaubuisness was trying to put everything in the van. She had put body parts in a crock pot. Her mom found her son's head in a bucket, I believe, in the basement. I mean, I can't even imagine. His body, his member, can I say, was found in a crock pot. I don't know. So this probably won't surprise you. We're going to call this the meth murder. So last week, she was in a courtroom with her attorney, Jolly, and who was not so jolly because after her attorney suggested that he needed more time to get his psych eval, and the judge was agreeing and changing the date to weeks or I think maybe 2 months later, she attacked her attorney and went insane. Now, I don't think she's on meth now, but I don't know. I do know when people lose weight, if they have a drug in their fat cells, like as those fat cells, if you lose weight, the fat cells, get like reused, they can reenact the drug. So was she having a meth fuel? Like, I have no idea. But she attacked him, as you can see, in court. She was knocked down to the floor. People were trying to get her. And then all of a sudden, like, she was sitting there normal. The judge said something about delaying things, and she went insane. So now, just today, the 27th, Tuesday, her attorney that she attacked has said that their relationship is irreparably damaged. So you can hear the dyslexia there. I almost got caught up on that. Irreparably damaged. You think? So now the public defender's office, they've got a new lawyer for her. I think she needs that eval. Are you getting the theme of a lot of mental illness and drug use? Our society is not doing so great. So that was Shaubuisness. All right, we are to our favorite last day of February. Our favorite couple in love, Bonnie and Clyde. No, not Bonnie and Clyde. This is Lori Vallow-Daybell, and this is Chad Daybell. As you are probably aware of, so this is case number 9. The Daybells are going to court. I believe it's April 9th. Early April, we have a court date. We are going. The crimes were committed in September, allegedly, September of 2019 into 2020, because I think Tammy Daybell was killed then in October of 2019. So all the murders were in 2019, but the bodies weren't found until June of 2020. Height of COVID, Lori and Chad had run away to Hawaii, first to get married in November of 2019, and then they were in Hawaii trying to make a go of it again. Lori liked to live in Hawaii, so she went back there with Chad, and I think they were going to stay there if they could, and then the children were found, their bodies were found in his backyard. And when that happened, Lori had been extradited and brought back for her missing children, and then when they found the children's body, then the missing children and not telling where they were was dropped in 2020. They were both charged for the murders. Lori immediately had mental problems, and then for over a year was in the mental health facility to be reconstituted. That's what we say when something's been dehydrated, to get sane again. She was found to be sane at about a year later, which was 2021 into 2020. I'm getting confused as to how long. It was almost from 2020 to 2021 in the summer. She wasn't whatever. And then the trial kept getting moved back. She had another maybe relapse, like maybe she wasn't going to be okay. They had to look at her again. So the trial has kept being moved back. Now Chad the whole time, first he wanted to go faster, but then he didn't. And now that they're both ready to go, the past 6 months, all John Pryor has wanted to do is sever the trial. He says Chad needs more time, which Chad hasn't had any mental problems. So he gave up his right to a speedy trial. Lori did not. So it sounds to me, and maybe you guys think so too, that there's a little maybe strategy here, and some of the people online have said, the lawyers that talk about this case, maybe it sounds like Lori Hellis of Children in Darkness and Light is one of the best sources for the Lori Vallow-Daybell case. She said she thinks that Mark Means, who was representing both of them at one time, remember? And also lived in Rexburg, I believe. That Mark Means, she feels, gave Lori the advice that always say speedy trial and never back off that. Never give up your speedy trial. It goes to help Chad, because now Pryor didn't want to go because he didn't have enough time. And then he did want to go to trial, and now he doesn't want to go to trial. And it seems like it is just to separate from Lori. Why, you ask? Well, Lori Hellis, attorney at law, had a very good reasoning for why they would want to do this, why this would work out strategically, especially best for Chad. Because if Lori goes, now Lori has had very little time. She's only had these lawyers and been able to speak to them for, barely 6 months to get ready for a, death penalty case. If she goes first, Chad's lawyer sees the whole case laid out, and then he can make an excuse to fix it later. See, Chad didn't want to go. He didn't say, I want a speedy trial when Lori was committed. And he probably could have gotten a severance if he was said, no, I want a speedy trial. But he gave up that right, and he kept waiting. Now, why would he not want to go then? Well, because he doesn't want to see what the court's going to do. If Lori thinks Chad is a prophet, which I think Lori does, and if Mark Means might be part of that whole thing, I don't know. That is my GSR. That's just gossip. That's my speculation based on nothing that I know, except that Mark Means knew Lori and Chad from Rexburg as this all started. But if they all believe that Chad is the prophet and needs to be protected, then Lori will sacrifice her own self so that Chad's lawyer can see what the state has. Because once they view what they did with Lori, even if they get a conviction, they can have a better idea about how to make a better defense. You always want to be second if you're a co-conspirator. Always. Because you get a preview of what the state has. Not only is it very expensive for the state, we know that both cases are going to be heard in Boise, so the whole Rexburg area, Fremont County, is going to have to relocate to Boise, which is hours away across the state. Very expensive for everybody. They don't want to do it twice. I don't think they should. I think they should keep these cases. They're co-conspirators. They did the exact same thing for the exact same reason at the exact same time. And I think this is a strategy, personally. And then John Pryor was saying, oh, they found this DNA, and I need my experts to look at this DNA, and I don't know about this DNA. Well, the DNA people came back Monday. They were going to have a hearing, and they decided, so on Thursday, we will hear about this DNA. Now, some YouTubers, like Scott Reich on Crime Talk, has said, well, they should separate this, and John Pryor needs more time, and so the case would be appealed based on that the lawyer wasn't good enough. And other lawyers have said, he's had since 2020 to prepare. 2020, 21, 22. That's right, people. 23. Let's drink to 3 years of preparedness. John Pryor. Prepare. I think it's going down in April. I don't think Judge Boyce is going to... Enough of this. Everybody's had enough time. It's go time. And nobody should get the advantage. And the Idaho people shouldn't have to pay for 2 10-week trials. And it's not going to be, as far as we know, still... which Larry and Kay Woodcock, the grandparents of J.J. Vallow, the ones who alerted the authorities that these children were missing in the first place, they're from Louisiana. They can't just relocate for 20 weeks now, like for the whole year, and just go that's very expensive. And neither can all the other family members, Chad's family members, Lori's family members. Doing this twice is insane. Very expensive, and for what? How does it protect them? John Pryor, get your affairs in order. You're going to trial, is my guess. And the DNA is not going to be exculpatory, because even if it's not Chad's DNA, it doesn't say he wasn't there. That doesn't. It was on his property, and he was there. His phone was at his house when the kids were being buried. I believe that's what the evidence was. So it's not exculpatory if it's not his, and if it is his, it's really not exculpatory. And if you were wondering, exculpatory means you can think of I think exculpatory, I think of scope. It doesn't make sense for what the word is, but I think of cutting out, cutting you out of the problem. It doesn't exculpate him. It doesn't cut him out. It doesn't make him innocent. It's not evidence that helps his case, even if he's not there. So I don't see what the deal is. All right, so that's our friends in Idaho. Now we go to Low Country Justice, the Murdaugh case. Case number 10. What's our update? Well, last week we found out that the case, the main SLED investigator admitted on the stand, which I can't believe this didn't stop everything in its tracks. He said, yeah, I did tell the grand jury that there was blood splatter on this white shirt, that we found blood on this white t-shirt. That's how they got the indictment. If you remember, Mandy Matney got a tip and put it into the her Murdaugh Murders podcast, which millions of people have seen, in which the first, I think it was it 2020, they included the information that it was a big get by her and Liz Farrell that somebody had heard that there was blood splatter on Alex's clothes the night that he was interviewed, that he found his family dead, and he did it. It was blood splatter, blowback from a gun. Okay, so now we find out from the investigator that, well, no. Now, he doesn't say he lied to the grand jury. He says he made a mistake. I guess he did. But, I mean, that's how you indicted somebody. You said there was blowback, blood splatter from a gunshot with the people's blood. Yeah, looks real guilty. Now we find out, oh, by the way, that was a mistake. But don't worry, they know that the other clothes he was seen wearing in the Snapchat, one of the videos of Paul's thing, that's the clothes he was wearing. Of course, we have a problem. We have maybe 20 minutes where Alex Murdaugh, as I spoke about before, the guy who didn't know he had radio towers that couldn't be shot out, that somehow arranged for him to be, oh, somebody shot out my tire. Oh, okay, that can't even happen. Oh, I tried to kill myself. I mean, he is so bad at making up excuses and lying and messy, but that guy we're supposed to believe somehow had 2 guns stashed, somehow shot 2 people, got rid of both guns, cleaned himself all up, cleaned up all the clothes and hid everything, and also was on the phone talking, and also went to his parents. And they're like, yeah, but he drove to his parents really fast. Okay. The case, after the defense rested, okay, number one, when the t-shirt was found to be whatever, it should have been a mistrial. They should have tried him again. Later, when they have better evidence, more evidence that promotes their case. Not just he's a financial liar. He lies. So if he lies, you can't believe anything he says. That's not how we try people here. You have to have the evidence of the crime he committed. Not, he's a sucky person. He's a liar. He's a thief. Therefore, he must be a murderer, right? Which is what my sister told me. She goes, yeah, look, he just lies so much. Okay, but where's the evidence of murder? Yeah, and by the way, he admitted to all the financial crimes. He took the stand, which I swear, people who take the stand, I feel like only innocent people take the stand. Especially when they know they're going to be really, I don't know. I think Alex Murdaugh got caught up in other crap. Oh, we also heard that there was a drug gang that they knew that he and Eddie Smith were kind of tangentially involved in, called, I forget what they're called, but the Cowboys are the bigger over group of this group that's around their area that they're involved with. Did they do anything with those people? Did they look into those people? No, they did not. Why? Well, because there's just not enough evidence. And this is why murder trials that are successful, people always say, why did they wait so long? Because you can't just go on what you think in your gut. You have to prove it. And this is the worst of our American system, because most of the people who I typically love, my tried and true main squeeze sources, I can't listen to them talk about the Murdaugh trial. The only person I can stand to listen to is Peter Tragos, the lawyer you know. Please go subscribe to his channel, because he is the only person who realistically And he says, I hate Alex Murdaugh. He's not a good guy. But they don't have evidence. And they're using character assassination and propensity. Two things which our government and the Supreme Court has said you're not allowed to just say someone is a bad person overall, therefore, you run them down, you assassinate their character, and then, okay, so that's why they did this. Peter Tragos is the only person, a lawyer, he's been a past criminal lawyer in Florida, he's been a public defender, and he's worked on both sides. Now he does mostly civil work in his father's and they have another lawyer in their practice. And I am telling you, he is the only person who is advising watchers about our legal system versus what's going on in South Carolina right now, which is not okay. Especially if you don't, we can't say if we don't like somebody, they should be railroaded, and it's okay that we don't have the evidence because we know they're bad. Because when does that come to be one of us? I mean, does everybody love you? I know everybody doesn't love me. I mean, then we have to depend on our likability. That is the opposite of what our system is all about. So, the Murdaugh case, right now as it stands, the defense is still putting on their defense case in chief. They had a lot of great experts too. An expert that could better explain things. And as Peter Tragos says, SLED lost this case by doing a sloppy investigation. Because the investigator, the expert witness hired by the defense was like, well, how would you find out the time of death? I would take the temperature rectally. I would, check their liver. I would do rigor mortis. Whereas, what did the person do that showed up to the scene? Stuck his hand under their armpit? So, the fact that there's weird angles, it's kind of like a Kennedy magic bullet situation. I don't like it. I think it's, like I said, low country justice. Alec Murdaugh lived by the Good Old Boys network, and he's going down the same way. He didn't play fair, and he's getting screwed over. And, is there justice in that? I just don't like it. I don't like it, and I don't like so many people that I trust being okay with a grand jury indictment based on a lie. There was no blood on that shirt that they found. So how is the indictment legal? If that can happen, if they can just go, oh yeah, well, oops about that indictment. But anyway, we're here for murder. No. I mean, financial crimes? Yeah. Was he greedy? Did he have a drug problem? There was another lawyer on YouTube. I don't think her name is Harper Lee, but it's Harvard Lee Lawyer is her channel. And she is from, I don't know if she's from Tennessee, but she was speaking to an actual drug addict because, apparently Murdaugh would have had to spend $50,000 a month or something on opiates. And he was like, yeah, you could spend that much money, but could you do all that practicing? And could you hide it from everybody for 20 years? And he was like, or could you get involved in organized crime, perhaps? And also have developed an addiction because you had an accident and they gave you opiates. Plus, then you have all this stress. Plus, maybe people are, you're money laundering. You're not just taking all that money yourself by doing all those deals and stealing from your clients. Maybe someone owns you. Maybe that's just as good of a story with just as much evidence as they're putting on for murder. I mean, I'm making logical sense that maybe Alec was a lazy Nepo baby who got involved in organized crime. He owns Moselle. It's got an airfield. He doesn't have cameras around Moselle because he is not going to catch illegal activity being done by him and others because you don't make evidence, right, for yourself. And that's where all the money went. And that's why he was committing so many financial crimes. And and there's all that missing money because of organized crime, drugs, money laundering. Now, can I prove that? No. But that's just, it's really logical. And it's just as well evidenced as the murder case by the state. Sounds good, sounds reasonable. Where's the evidence? There's no evidence. There was no blood on Alec Murdaugh. There's no guns. We know some guns were stolen or were gone missing. Now, if there were drug dealers and co-conspirators of a drug running on your property and your son's leaving shit around, maybe they pick it up. Just, for an insurance. Just in case Alex decides maybe he's going to turn state's evidence. Maybe then they're going to convince him that's not such a good idea by taking out his family and making sure, the heat was on Alex, don't get me wrong, but how do we know that doesn't mean then he was going to be weak, which fits with his character more, spoiled, going to take the deal, going down, give state's evidence, give them a bunch of drug runners and illegal activity, get off easy. Doesn't that sound more like what we know about Alex Murdaugh? He couldn't kill his family dog. Couldn't do it. But we're supposed to believe he blew out his son's brains and acted like there was no problem and didn't get anything on him and was able to get rid of all the evidence, all the blood, and people are like, yeah, but he went to Alameda and that's where he took the gun and it was in the smokehouse and blah, blah. Says who? Says somebody on the internet who says maybe that happened, but what's the evidence? SLED never even went to Alameda and looked in every single place. They didn't look at all the traps. They didn't look for blood. What the hell was SLED doing? That's what you need to ask yourself. This whole thing is what has been described as, what I would describe as FUBAR, which is, I believe, a military term, fucked up beyond all recognition, FUBAR. Because this investigation, they didn't immediately lock down everybody. They didn't they didn't wear booties on the scene. They didn't make sure that any footprints were checked out. They didn't do all the trajectory, evidence things that you can do. What was going on? They did 35 tests on a shirt that actually ended up not having any blood on it and had to scrap a very expensive expert that they even took the shirt back to Oklahoma to have him look at, but they couldn't have him on the stand because he screwed up. So they found somebody else. The whole thing, FUBAR. All right, so that is case 10. I'll tell you what the ending is. I think the Low Country Justice is going to work just like it's always worked, which they've decided that Alex is guilty. They're cutting him loose. The good old boy network has decided he ain't no good old boy anymore. It's just my opinion. It reminds me of what people want to do with, you're going to all love this, but Donald Trump. Donald Trump didn't do anything while in office by himself because he wasn't a lawyer and he didn't have any idea about which levers to pull. Other people helped him. Those are the dangerous people. But the dumb out front is going to be the sacrificial lamb. Alex Murdaugh ain't no, he ain't no criminal genius. He's not. Look at his side of the road thing. He's an idiot. No, there's more. There's way more to this story, but maybe we won't find out because he is going to go down so that everybody else can go on their merry way and not be looked at, in my opinion. That's, sorry, gave you guys a little thing. All right, our last case for episode 11. Sad to drink too, but since we're drinking champagne to celebrate a year on YouTube, let's pour out a glass for the lives lost. Maddie Mogan, Kaylee Gonsalves, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle, the 4 victims who lived at 1122, which is really weird, as people point out. And again, it's just a weird numbers thing. This is more of things that just happen to correlate, not causate. But it is strange that it was 1122 Kings Road, and it happened to be the 11th month of 2022, when the murders in Idaho, Moscow, Idaho, took place on the University of Idaho. So, as you can see behind me, there is 1122 Kings Drive. Interestingly, the owner of the building gave the title to and donated the property to the University of Idaho, and the president this week has said that they will be demolishing that building. Nobody will live in it. It won't be. It's become a macabre site. Kind of like, oh, I forgot to say, they're going out for a jury field trip to Moselle. Sorry, that's going backwards. Let's go backwards just for a second. At Moselle, where the murders took place, the jury, remember like in the Piketon County Massacre, how they went to all the different sites to see where the murders had been placed? The prosecution, I believe, actually wanted to do that. In this case, the defense was like, I want them to see how far the house was from the kennels and to explain the steps taken and all that and the time that it would take. And the prosecution wasn't too hot on that, which makes me wonder, why don't you want them to see it, prosecution? Anyway, so similarly, though, people, I guess, have been going out to Moselle and taking pictures in the feed room, which is sick and disgusting and disturbing, that you would want to take pictures where somebody was killed. I mean, this isn't like an old-fashioned 1,000-year-old case or 100-year-old case like Jack the Ripper, where there's, I guess, in London, there's tours and stuff. This is, I mean, recent. And these people, it was so horrific that these children were killed in the way they were killed. But I guess people have been going. Not just news crews anymore. People go to see the house. So it's too much of a disturbance, and it just is a bad reminder. So the university said it will be demolishing the house. The last thing we're going to be, so I kind of think that's a good thing. They're going to make either, I don't know, remember it's just up the hill from where the fraternities are located. So I think it might actually like sort of attach to the university. I mean, and it is now university owned. So I think it just extends the university where they already own property. And if so, they're either going to make a memorial site there, like a park, maybe a bench, or maybe someplace closer to campus. But I think that's a good idea. All right, the last thing we're going to talk about is there have been a lot of motions and filings within the Idaho court about sealing things related to the case. And the prosecution actually agrees with the defense. And they cited case law against what the Gonsalves lawyer, Shannon Gray, had proposed. Shannon Gray wanted the court to either clarify and especially lift the gag order. And the prosecution themselves had a very interesting response. I think it was 9 pages long. Peter Tragos, again, the lawyer you know, did a very eloquent and detailed description of what it means. And he read the response by the state. So this is the prosecution going against the alleged suspect, Brian Kober. And in it, they cited 2 important cases that had to do with media, pretrial, exploitive, scandalous like discussions that aren't in evidence. They're speculative. It's GSR. It's gossip, speculation, rumors, and how that ruins the right to a fair trial, and balancing that against the public's right to know. And basically, especially when witnesses are being tampered with, and witnesses are being tampered with, the media, especially on YouTube, has, and especially, not just YouTube, sorry, News Nation, hi Ashley Banfield, waving at you, constantly going after one of the witnesses, one of the roommates. They are impeding and almost influencing that person not to tell the truth. And there's been reports about her statements, which have not been corroborated by any official evidence or sourcing. Again, it may serve to tamper her willingness to be a witness. That's interfering with the trial when you interfere with the witnesses. It will affect the trial. It also, if you look at the Murdaugh case, misinformation was reported that there was blood splatter on a shirt, reported as fact. The authorities found it. Alec was indicted by this fact. Now, the sled guy got on the stand and went, no, by the way, we made a mistake. Oops. You can't get that back. You taint a trial. And so, why do we care? You're like, so what? Let them be tainted. Let them go to jail. The thing is, it could be overturned. It could be overturned on appeal. They could get off. And do you want a murderer getting off because you just had to say what you wanted to say? We as the public don't have the right to know everything. We don't. Not if it's going to affect the trial. Not if it's going to intimidate and change and inhibit a witness from telling what they know. Our entertainment and information is not as important as having a fair trial for both the accused and those accusing them, the witnesses' safety. As you can see, so it says, who has the right to a fair trial? Everyone. Even people we don't like, because that's how it works. Ashley Banfield was on today, was on one of her clips I saw today. I don't know if it was recorded today, saying, well, this is America. America. We have freedom of speech. Honey, it's just like the Second Amendment. No freedom. All freedoms of the individual are balanced with the rights of everybody else. It's a balancing act. It just is. There is no one absolute freedom of anybody to do anything without always being contextualized. All rules are contextualized within the situation, that specific situation. So in America, if you understood what America really stood for, Ashley, and you're a lawyer, which that really concerns me that she would say these statements, being a lawyer, because I'm not a lawyer, but I know that legally the right to free speech doesn't mean there's a bunch of exceptions and contextualizations. And when you balance that against a person's right to a fair trial and witnesses' protection against crazies, which we know are rampant on YouTube. Look at all the cases we talked about this week and in the past. If we violate the rights for one person because we say they're a shit, then everybody's affected. Then it could be anybody. Then we're on a slippery slope to, well, if we don't like you, your rights don't count. I don't know if you can see this, but I don't think I can make it bigger. The jury box, it says trial by error, and it has all the different media. That's kind of what we've got going on. And it's not great, you guys. It might be entertaining, and it's kind of and here I am doing it, but I'm trying to inform, right? I'm trying to involve critical thinking and more information about our system, which is my mission. So if I haven't stated that before, I really want us all to be better critical thinkers and to raise better children, to raise non-criminals, to understand why crime happens so we can avoid it, ourselves being victims, our families, our children growing up to be perpetrators. We can look at things and learn from them. How do we avoid this? What can we learn? That has been my mantra in many of my episodes. What can we learn from this? And what we can learn from both the Murdaugh trial and the Idaho 4 trial is that we have to wait. Even the Daybell trial, and as I stated before, in Idaho, people, the media is going to F it up because pretty soon Idaho, I think, is on its way to making precedent to seal most everything. Not forever, but until a trial occurs. Why? Because all this intense online scrutiny, not everybody is just talking about it. Some people are trying to get they go talk to witnesses. They go talk to people involved in the crime. As armchair detectives, as any non-legal detectives, we shouldn't be doing that. The news can certainly ask questions, but investigative reporter has almost become like investigative YouTubers. So I wrote that the key is to balance the rights of the defendant with the witness and the witnesses with the public's right to know. And it's important because it makes everybody safe. So it makes, what this says is that the right to the fair trial operates under the concept that you're innocent until proven guilty, which we've talked about all the time. Everybody does. It assures that the government cannot take anybody's freedoms or liberties without going through a fair and just process of proving guilt. That, my dog's barking, but that's not happening. It didn't happen in the Murdaugh case. Yes, he's a horrible person, but he's being charged for financial crimes at the same time he's being charged with a murder, and there's no evidence really directly of the murder, and yet because he did these other crimes, everybody's like, oh, you lied about that? Well, you're a liar. Ergo, you have the propensity to lie. You must have done this. That is muddied. And that's what 404 B and 403, I don't know if it's A or B, but that's why those laws exist against propensity and against character assassination. Because it colors and biases the jury against the person and not using the evidence. And if it can happen to them, it can happen to us. Okay, off my soapbox. So again, everybody, this has been the True Crime Grapevine here on YouTube. If you liked this episode, please like and subscribe. I'm going to be taping some more detailed sections about the Nicola Bulley case, about the Samantha Humphreys case, and about more about other cases. And if you want to hear about more, please put it in the comments. I would love to hear from you. Like, subscribe. Let me know what you think. All right. Bye.